With any transition question, it might be helpful to categorize the transition words into simpler versions before you kind of get going. So you need to memorize that furthermore is basically a version of and, by contrast is basically a version of but, and similarly is also kind of a version of and. It's got a little extra something though. It's much more for comparison. So it's kind of like and plus. So maybe it's not the same thing as furthermore. That is, what is that? Well, this might be one that is unusual. So you can't cross it out. You can't be afraid of picking it. It might be right. So let's recognize that we know 3 of these transitions very well, or at least we're supposed to. And that if it is this weird one, we'll deal with it as it comes. So let's take a look at the sentences and see if we can now get a simple meaning from these sentences. In a heated debate in biogeography, the field is divided between dispersalists and vicarianists. I don't know that word. There are those who argue that dispersal is the most crucial determining factor in a species distribution, and those who insist that vicariance, separation due to geographic barriers, is. Oh, what an ugly sentence. But I get what they're doing. They're just saying what each of these things is, right? So it's certainly not a contrast. It's definitely not saying they're different, right? I mean, there is a division, there's a difference between the dispersalists and the vicariancists, but we're not contrasting them between that first sentence and that second sentence. We are contrasting them within each sentence, right? So the second sentence is not a contrast of the first, it's a continuation. So we might think of something like furthermore and similarly, but I think this is what makes this so hard is those don't quite fit either. We are not just first of all, we're not making a comparison, right? So similarly is weird. And again, I know we are talking about 2 different types of this debate, I guess, 2 sides of this debate, but we are not saying that the second sentence is similar to the first. We are not contrasting or comparing 2 different things from sentence 1 to sentence 2. Within sentence 1 and within sentence 2, we have a contrast and a comparison. So this is a sneaky question. They're definitely trying to trap you with these 2 answers. Now, furthermore is a choice that you might pick if there's nothing else that works. And so I think a lot of you might pick that at this point just because it's more familiar to you, but it doesn't really do anything. This isn't a furthermore. We're not adding on something new. We are continuing what we just said. And that is what choice D does. That is a way of saying, in other words, that's basically what it means. In other words, there are those who argue that dispersal is the most crucial determining factor and those who insist that vicariance is, right? So they are basically just defining the 2 terms that they just gave us. They are putting them in other words. They are maybe even giving us a example. So we might even throw this in the for example category of transition words. It's very unusual, but it kind of means that. And so we've got at least some new ways of thinking about it, but those ways have more meaning. The word furthermore doesn't really have some extra meaning. It is purely just like, okay, we're finished with whatever we said. We are moving on to the next thing, but that is not happening here. We are continuing with the exact same thought we just had. We're just giving more detail about it. So furthermore is too kind of dismissive and moving on to the next thing. We need something that's more connective and transition-y, and that's kind of what D does. It's a hard question. There are definitely some traps here, but it just goes to show, don't be afraid of transition words that you don't know. They might be right. Try to use the words that you do know, the ones that fit those main categories, and then you can hopefully sort through it and get to the right answer through that.